G'day guys, welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast. This is episode 9, I believe, and we're getting up to round 8 now. Round 7 was pretty big. We had Port Adelaide come from behind to beat St Kilda. We had Geelong probably on the way back now, having their 4th win in a row. We saw Sydney lose a huge lead against the Giants, and the Giants caused an upset. We also saw Collingwood come back yet again to win against the Crows. As always, here with our co-host Jack, or Jackpot Junkies, over on Instagram. How did you think the round went this week?
Yeah, there was a couple close games. One a classic, obviously, with the Collingwood game, then a couple blowouts like we saw on Saturday night with both of those pretty disappointing, not even AFL standard teams going at it.
Yeah, I thought that North Melbourne definitely off that honeymoon period of Alistair Clarkson. Now they've lost, 4 in a row, and the last 2 of the last 3 games they've looked dreadful against Brisbane and obviously Melbourne. So I think that's kind of the honeymoon period's over, and now Alistair Clarkson has to find some sort of magic out of that group.
Yeah, he's got to find out some diamonds in the rough. He's got to play the youth players that are going to be there for the future of their club. So
yeah, well, one thing that Alistair Clarkson did say during the week, he was talking about the new Tasmanian development, the new Tasmanian team that's suspected to be coming announced, I don't know, probably at the end of the year if they are going to have a team.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in the next couple of years. I don't know how it's going to be. But nonetheless, the government and the AFL have announced that there's going to be a $750 million budget or something for the new stadium down in Tasmania for the new team.
Yeah.
So what's your overall belief of the new Tassie team coming to the AFL?
I think it's needed for the AFL to be whole, as if you want to say that. They're saying the stadium's not going to have a roof, which I'm pretty disappointed that they're not going to do that, since it's right on the beach front. It's going to be extremely cold for everything that happens there. So, but I think it's in the capacity of the ground's going to be mid to 20,000s.
So I have always said that Tasmania should have a team in the AFL. I think it's always been needed. I think Tasmania don't really have a lot of teams in context of like sports in Australia as well. I think they have an NBL team, and they also have obviously the Big Bash, but I think it's going to be very difficult in the beginning for a Tasmanian team to flourish. I think that they can most definitely, but a big thing that's being talked about is the fact that the stadium is going to cost way more than $750 million.
Yeah.
I've looked up a few things just before starting, actually, about things that like we got to look at from like the Giants and things like that. So the Giants stadium was estimated at like $900 million, and eventually it almost doubled the cost in the end of price, which was $1.6 billion.
Yeah.
So they're also saying that like they don't want to have a roof. They're saying that they're not going to have a roof on the Tasmanian stadium, which I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. I think it almost needs to.
Yeah, I think
to a certain extent, because the stadium is in Tasmania. It's 9 months, 10 months of the year. It's raining and cold. I think it'd be great for the stadium as a whole to be the second only stadium in the country that's got its roof on it, or AFL stadium anyway. I think that would be very beneficial as well. Like, you know, they could have a really cool roof over it that goes up and back. But that would double the price of the stadium. And if they're already estimating for $750 million for a stadium with no roof, it's like the Giants stadium that's cost $1.6 billion, I think they're going to be, if they are deciding to not keep a roof on it, they're at least looking at $1.5 billion, which is no mean feat. Obviously, that's a huge amount of money. And the Tasmanian government, I don't know the exact amount, but the Tasmanian government are paying for a bit of it. The AFL are only paying for about 15% of the total bill. And I think the Australian government and Tasmanian governments are paying for the majority of the rest, I think. I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on that. I 100% believe that the Tasmanian team should be for the AFL. I think that the whole state would get around it. It's not like the GWS and Gold Coast situation, because the fact is, they're not football states. Tasmania is a football state. But another thing as well is, how many kids are going to want to go down to Tasmania and play if they're not from Tasmania?
Yeah.
I think it's a big thing to leave the main if you can say it, the main part of the island of Australia to go down to Tasmania where it's cold 9 months of the year. I personally love the cold, but I don't think a lot of kids around, 18 want to move down to Tassie.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it will be great, and I think that Alistair Clarkson did make a good point of how they could make it a fortress down there. Because if you learn the conditions down in Tasmania, in 3 or 4 years of the team's development and, growth, I mean, so many teams are going to go down there and not know the conditions very well, and all these players are just going to know it off by heart.
Yeah. As you saw with Hawthorn a couple of weeks ago when they played the Crows.
Yeah, they nearly knocked them off.
But, yeah.
And the Crows have got a terrible record down there and only just caught back, and I don't think against any other team they would have. So, I mean, I would love it as a Tasmanian team. I think it'd be great. I think that it'd have to be in Hobart, because Hobart's a lot more populated than the rest of Tasmania, like Launceston, for example.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit surprised that they just didn't want to redevelop one of the stadiums they've already got.
I think that's what they should have done. And, I was surprised that they didn't just decide to invest in one of the stadiums and completely demolish it and rebuild it to whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, I'm surprised by they didn't do that, and I feel like it would be a lot more of a money saver when they've already got 2 stadiums down there that hold sport.
The other reason was that for cricket, that's the reason that they're not having a roof on it, is because the cricket, it doesn't really make sense since they play
at
Big Bash.
Stadium.
They play the Big Bash at Marvel Stadium, so I think that's just a cop out. But
yeah, I don't know about that, but
yeah,
I think overall, 100%. I think the AFL almost need to have I think it'd be good to have a 19th or a 20th team, like 19 and 20 teams, because then the teams could just play once every single week of the year against each other, 20 rounds, instead of having 24 rounds. And I think the fixture as well is quite. I think the fixturing of the AFL lately has been fucking woeful. It's not fair to any team, because like some teams, like, I don't want to hate on the Crows, but they've had a very easy start to the year, only playing Carlton and Port Adelaide, I think, who are in the 8 at the moment.
Oh, and
Collingwood. And the rest of the games they've had have been against Hawthorn, which is a pretty easy beat. They had Fremantle, who seem like easy beats this season. The GWS, who they lost to, which, yes, Sydney lost to them, but they should really beat the Giants. And that's I can't remember who else.
I think also, like, Carlton have the Eagles twice.
Yeah.
Which is, as we saw in the game, which we'll talk about later, which was demoralising.
Well, also as well, St Kilda, I think, have only left Victoria once this year.
Is that gather round when they moved?
I think it was that. I think it's the only time they've played outside of, or maybe it's once or twice they've only played outside of Marvel this season, I think.
Yeah, because they played the 150th against Essendon at
the MCG. I think that is. I can't remember exactly, but I think definitely one of the Victorian teams have only left the state once this year. So I think that's a little bit unfair but I mean, it's pretty hard to do when they have 10 teams in Victoria, 8 teams in Victoria. I can't even remember now. But I think as well they've talked they could bring in a 20th team, and one of them could be a South Australian club.
What I've heard is that they would do it for one of the teams up north in WA, around there, to get probably the NT and WA into it, sort of thing.
Okay, I've heard Norwood. Maybe an option as well. I think that it should be a third club if it's going to be one of those. It has to be. I think it should be South Australia. That's not just bias, but I think we saw how well Gather Round went. And to be honest, where's a club going to be built where it's well in WA higher up?
Yeah, like I think Broome probably is the only area.
But it's a country town, isn't it? A country area. Like I don't know if that's going to fill a whole AFL. Like the thing is as well, if you're going, let's say you're coming down to South Australia for the weekend to go watch the footy, where are you going to go? I mean, you're going to go to Norwood. That's not too far away from the CBD. If you want to go to Broome to go watch AFL football once every 2 weeks, for example.
Yeah.
Once a fortnight. You want to go see a team. Is anyone going to go up to Broome to fucking go see the footy? But I don't know. Maybe it would work. I just think as well that Optus Stadium, I don't know. I just think it'd be kind of weird for Perth to get it. Well, Western Australia. But nonetheless, I wanted to talk about now AFL 23. So we talked about it last week. We gave a little bit of our thoughts about it. I think it's going to be the best AFL game that we've seen. I just had a few issues with the pricing of it, considering it's a $79 game and it's also going to have microtransactions. So that was my issue with it. It does look quite good. I think it looks a little bit clunky in some areas as well, but I've seen a few videos of gameplay that's seen so far, and it's actually looked okay. But obviously, one thing that was mentioned as well is this game is going to have like an Ultimate Team feature, and it's also going to have like AFL's version of icons from FIFA, which are legend players. Now, AFL actually recently released two players from every single team in the AFL, and named 2 legends for each of them.
Yeah.
So today, I thought it'd be a good idea that me and my brother have gone through. Haven't looked at them yet, but we've made like a little list of like two other players in different teams that could have been legends or will come in the future. Because I think they've said that they will bring future AFL legends to this game, which I think is good.
Yeah, which they kind of have to do since it's a new game that they got to make it.
Because this game's not going to be like FIFA, it comes out every year. I think it will be like a 2 or 3 or 4 year thing. So, because I don't think big ant studios who make the game are going to be able to make a game every single year. I think that's a little bit. I don't think there's any chance of that happening. But nonetheless, we've gone through and we've wrote down a little list together of like 2 different players, and I guess I'll start. We got Adelaide. I've picked McLeod and Simon Goodwin. I think they would both be pretty good additions to the game. Who have you got for the Crows?
I've went McLeod as well, and I went Rashudo for.
Yeah, so I mean both. Well, all of them are premiership players for the Crows in 98, 99, so I think that'd be fair enough. Also, if you do see this, guys, let me know down below who you believe what legend player you would like to see. I've tried to go for a lot more players that you guys have seen, because I'm assuming I'm surprised a lot of legends that they've picked are players of like in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. I mean, how many people from the 80s and the 90s are going to be playing this game? I don't know if there's going to be many. I'm surprised they haven't picked more from like the 2000s and whatever. But after that, we got to Brisbane. I've picked Jason Ackermanis and Jonathan Brown. I'm very surprised Jonathan Brown isn't in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm surprised as well. But I picked the same as well for the legends that should have probably been in the game.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how they picked these legends. I'm assuming that they had to ask these players for like their name rights and whatever. And maybe some people didn't want to be a part of the game, which is totally fair. But I think a lot of the players that they've picked are quite strange. Next up, though, for Carlton, I picked Cade Simpson and Mark Murphy.
Yeah, I went Cade Simpson as well, but I went for Vol, which I'm surprised that they didn't go with him either, since I thought they would go with some characters, which are different, a bit out there players, but...
Yeah, I mean, they could have been well enough. For Collingwood, I have to mention this. Why did they pick David Cloak?
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought, I thought they just misprinted Travis Cloak.
Yeah, I was very surprised that David Cloak, of all people, got into this game. There are so many legends for Collingwood, and they picked David Cloak.
Yeah, like you could have picked anyone, really.
Yeah, so I chose Dane Swan and Nick Maxwell.
Yeah, I went... which everyone should pretty much know by now, is Peter Dacos. We've all seen him pretty much every week in the AFL this year.
Yeah, when one of the Dacos brothers have a decent game, they're always in the stands at the MCG.
Yeah, and I went with Alan Didak as well, with a good forward pocket he was. So
yeah, so next we get to Essendon, and this one is so surprising that this player wasn't picked, but I picked James Hird. I don't know if that's because the AFL don't like him anymore or whatever, but I felt that was very surprising. And I also picked Jobe Watson. Yeah, I mean, wasn't Brownlow medalist until he got it taken away from him, but...
Yeah, I picked the same as well. Like, I think... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I think the people they did choose for Essendon was probably right in... Fletcher and...
Matthew Lloyd.
And Matthew Lloyd. So there's a lot to choose for Essendon, so...
Yeah. After that, I think this is probably the one that they got the most correct, which is Fremantle. They picked Pavlich and David Mundy. I think that's pretty well fair enough. But for 2 legends for Freo, I picked Aaron Sandland and Hayden Ballantyne. I think they were pretty legendary players for their club in their day. Maybe not so much Ballantyne, but I still think he'd probably deserve a spot.
Yeah, I went with Sandlands, but I also went with Luke McFarlane. I thought he was always a good player, centre half back for the Dockers. So surprised by that one.
Yeah. So after that, we've got the Gold Coast and the Giants. Now, because I was very when I was thinking about it, I could not think of a person I could think of other than Gary Ablett for the Gold Coast, which I know you've picked.
That's the obvious one. Yeah. So
I'm very surprised. It was very hard to pick legends for these clubs, just because a lot of the players who I would define as a legend for these clubs haven't retired yet. Like, for example, I think David Swallow for the Gold Coast would be one.
That's the obvious one.
And for the Giants, Callan Ward probably, and Phil Davis would probably be my two picks for them. But obviously they haven't retired yet, so they can't become legends. But I know you've picked a couple.
Yeah, I went with Gary Ablett Jr. He just had to. I was surprised he wasn't actually picked. I don't know, maybe it was because of the Geelong factor that was there. I couldn't really pick another one for the Gold Coast. Really, I went Nathan Bock, but that was the only thing I picked. And for the Giants, where did I go? It was I went Ryan Griffin and Chad Corns for them, but there was not many other people you choose from. Maybe Stevie J, obviously.
Yeah,
Johnson.
Other than that, it's really hard to pick from the Giants ones as well.
Because
Because again, a lot of them haven't retired yet.
Yeah.
So I think that was a bit difficult one, but yeah, I think that was pretty well good enough. After that, we get to Geelong. I've picked Cameron Mooney and Jimmy Bartell. Now, there are obviously so many legendary players from like Geelong. I'm sure you picked a couple as well.
Yeah, I went for the backman. I went for the Matthew Scarlett, pretty much says what itself, and Corey Enright. They were both pretty lethal as a
Defensive unit back there at the time.
Defensive unit in their premiership window.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Darren Milburn, they've got Andrew Mackey, Joel Corey, Stevie J. I mean, the Geelong, they could probably fill out a whole team of like a legends team for the Geelong. So, I mean, they were very good in their day. After that, though, we get to Hawthorn. Again, Hawthorn had so many players in their premiership era when, like, you know, Jared Ruffhead, Jesus Christ, I've just completely gone blank. Cyril Rioli. I mean, I think that he could be a part of that. I'm very surprised with Hawthorn's picks.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much Jason Dunstall. I get that, like, he was like one of the top goal scorers of all time.
Yeah.
But Platten, I don't even know. I remember when he played. I think it was in the 70s or the 80s. But John Platten, of all people, I thought that was a very surprising pick. But I've went with Sam Mitchell and Luke Hodge, both probably their best midfielders of their day, and also Luke Hodge obviously playing at half back for a lot of his career, late in his career as well. Went up to Brisbane for a little bit, but I mean they have got players who have played multiple clubs, so I'm not too surprised that Luke Hodge is on. I would put Luke Hodge as a Hawthorn legend.
Yeah, I went Sam Mitchell and I went Shane Crawford. Like, yeah, I think there was a lot of people to pick from for him. So, yeah, surprised it didn't go like in the game a bit. Yeah, in the 90s, 2000s, but
I think one thing they may have thought of when picking these legends as well, maybe like Sam Mitchell couldn't be one because he's a coach. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why Hawthorn. Maybe with Brisbane as well, they didn't pick. They did pick Michael Voss.
Yeah.
So they could pick them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's kind of weird, but anyway. After that, we've gone with Melbourne, and I've picked Nathan Jones. Very unlucky not to get a premiership a couple of years ago. Obviously, wasn't picked as what was emergency or was it a sub?
The sub was still there at that point, I think.
No, it was 2021.
Oh no, yeah, it was the.
Yeah, I'm very surprised they didn't put him in, but nonetheless, I get why. And the other one, this is probably the only one I've picked that's not in the 2000s, which is Jim Steins.
Yeah.
I think Melbourne's picks. Who was it in the end? It was David Neitz and Gary Lyon. I don't know about Gary Lyon. I mean, he played okay. I mean, he was a good player, obviously, but maybe it's because he was a commentator that they picked him.
Yeah,
I think that they have picked a lot of commentators in this list. They picked Jason Dunstall, Nathan Buckley. They've picked quite a few of them, so maybe that's what they're trying to go for, trying to get people that kids will know.
Well, if you look at it, most of them are from Fox Footy. If you look at it.
Yeah, well, Anthony Hudson is one of the commentators for the game, so I don't know, maybe they've got a little bit of influence on that. But what did you pick for Melbourne?
I went Jim Steins, but I went Aaron Davey. So I was surprised they didn't pick a couple small forwards.
For Melbourne in this list, they could have picked a few. But yeah, I'm a bit surprised by that one too. After that, we get to North Melbourne. I am so surprised that this player isn't in it. I don't know why Boomer Harvey is not picked in this list.
He was the most games played. Like how do you not? Yeah, by any player in the game. So
yet again, I don't know if players like opted out of being in this game. I don't know why, but I kind of get it. But I'm very surprised a lot of these players aren't on this list.
But you look at it, like Glenn Archer was one of the best defenders for North Melbourne, and Wayne Carey, well, that kind of says why itself, because he's one of the
best players in the game's history.
Forwards, yeah.
Even though he had sex with the captain's wife.
Yeah, we're not going there. And then I also went Daniel Wells, which was...
Daniel Wells is always a very good player as well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he did play a little bit at the end of his career at Collingwood, but I still think, like, you know, you can still play for multiple clubs and be a legend of one.
Yeah.
After that, we get to Port Adelaide. So, I've gone with Gavin Wanganeen, one of the best players for Port Adelaide, obviously. Yes, he played for Essendon earlier on in his career, but I still think he was... I mean, I think he'd be legendary status at Port Adelaide.
Like, you think... Most people that would think Gavin Wanganeen, they'd think of Port Adelaide. Yes, he won the Brownlow at Essendon, but...
Yeah, I think
most people would think Port Adelaide.
Yeah, and after that, I picked Robbie Gray. I think that Robbie Gray, yes, he did retire last year, but they also picked Joel Selwood, so I still think that he could still be picked.
Yeah.
But Robbie Gray is arguably one of the best players that Port Adelaide have ever had as well. Yeah. So I think that he definitely deserves a mention.
My other pick was so mine was Gavin Wanganeen, but I also went Byron Pickett. Like, he was just
he won the Norm Smith in 2004
when
he won.
Yeah, so he was one of the best players Port Adelaide had in the early years that they were there.
But after that, we get to Richmond. So Richmond, I kind of struggled with this. I don't know why. I was trying to think of players like in the 2000 era to like now. Mm-hmm. I did struggle with this one a bit, so sorry if I didn't pick like a Richmond player from the 80s or the 90s or whatever. But I went with Alex Rance and I also went with Chris Newman. I think Chris Newman was a very underrated defender in his day and was probably a little bit unlucky. He was a year or two off of that premiership, really, when they won it in 2017. I think he just retired a year or two ago.
Yeah, well, he held the record for the most games played without playing in a final.
Yeah, so not a record you want to hold.
Yeah, not one you want to hold, but I went Alex Rance, but I couldn't really think of anyone else, really. Like, you could have went Shane Edwards for him. I went Brett Deledio, but that was kind of like...
I mean, Deledio had a lot of a pretty good career with Richmond as well. Played late for GWS, but he was very injury prone as well, Brett Deledio. So I think I think he could... He definitely had the potential to be a legendary player, but unfortunately he couldn't stay fit on the field, to be honest. But after that, we get to St Kilda. St Kilda got quite a few who I was thinking of, especially like in that era just around 2007 to 2010. They had a lot of really good players. But I went with Lenny Hayes. I arguably think he's one of the best midfielders in that time of period as well. He was very unlucky to win a premiership. And the other one I picked was Robert Harvey. I mean, Robert Harvey, games record holder for St Kilda, I believe. Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he is.
Rewald.
No, Rewald got injured too many times.
Nah, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that they picked St Kilda pretty well. I think they picked... they picked Nick Rewalt, right? I don't know why they picked Peter Everett.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, he played for 3 different teams. I think he played more games for Hawthorn, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I think so.
And he played late in his career for Sydney, so I was surprised by that pick, but Rewalt was definitely one. Who did you pick for St Kilda?
I went Robert Harvey. You could have went Stevie Milne, probably best small forward.
Yeah, I was thinking of him as well. So,
that was my picks.
Wait, what was it?
I went also Stephen Baker.
Stephen Baker.
Yeah, he's one of the... He got his Brownlow vote late in his career, which he deserved. So I thought...
I was a little bit surprised that maybe Nick Dalsano didn't get it.
Yeah,
Brennan Goddard as well. I think
Brennan Goddard, I think
probably
maybe
would
have. Yeah.
Yeah. After that, we get to Sydney. This is one that I would like to take the reins on. But I picked Adam Goodes. I'm very surprised that Adam Goodes wasn't in this list. And also I picked Barry Hall. I think those two probably should have made it. I'm very surprised that Paul Kelly made it. He was a very good player, obviously. And I know I keep on saying that, like, I'm surprised, even though they're a good player. But I feel like if they want to pick players of this era and play people that, like, kids are going to know and, like, you know, young teenagers and all that sort of stuff, you know, the main player base of this game.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised they picked a lot of players from the 80s and stuff. So those would be my 2 picks for the Swans. Who'd you go with?
I went with Ted Richards and Nick Smith. I thought Nick Smith was one of the best small defenders to play the game in my era of watching footy. So I'm surprised that they didn't pick some other players. But like, you could have picked anyone from 2012 that defends that. One of the.
I mean, in Sydney you've got Ryan O'Keefe. They've got Nick Malcheski, obviously, who kicked the winning goal. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of Swans. Yeah. Leo Barry, obviously.
Like, you could have picked Leo Barry. Like, that was the... Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't picked players at, like, you know, big highlight moments as well. That, like, even from the 2000s era, people would know because, like, oh my God, I know him. I've seen him from this clip or I've seen him from this or that. So, yeah, I'm a bit surprised by that. But after that, we get to West Coast. And I've gone with Josh Kennedy for West Coast. Obviously, retired last year again. But I think he was probably one of the best forwards that they've ever had.
Yeah.
And I also went with Darren Glass. I think he was very underrated for a defender that he was, and also captain of West Coast for a number of years. So that's who I went with.
I went probably obvious, but with the best probably ruckman ever to play the game, with Dean Cox, and I went with Matt Predis.
Yeah, I mean Brownlow medalist who really wasn't was very unheralded. Didn't even make the All Australians team that year.
Yeah, I think he's the only one ever to not make the All Australian team and win the Brownlow.
Yeah, I don't think anyone saw Matt Predis didn't think of him winning one, but he did pull it out. And, I mean, he was definitely one of the best midfielders for West Coast at the time. Last of all, we got Western Bulldogs. I went with Robert Murphy, very unlucky, obviously, to miss the premiership in 2016. And Gian Siracusa, I think he was a very underrated small forward in his day. And, yeah, I mean, I think that they got pretty well done with the Bulldogs. Chris Grant was obviously very good, and Brad Johnson. Yeah. So I think they got that one pretty well right. Yeah. But, I think those two could have picked into the spot as well.
Yeah, I went Robert Murphy, but also went Adam Cooney. Like, you did win the Brownlow that year. Was it
2008? I think it was.
Yeah, something like that in the late 2000s. So
yeah, a little bit injury prone late in his career, but was definitely one of the best midfielders in his day.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, guys, those are our thoughts of different legends that we would like to see in the AFL game. Make sure to let us know down below in the comment section if you have any ideas of different AFL legends you would like to see in the new AFL 23 game. And I think when this comes out, it's only a few days away from actually releasing, so I'll be getting it on launch and probably playing it a few games on my channel as well, probably some live streams and stuff. But we'll move on now. We'll get into the votes for this week. Now, this week obviously had a few nail-biting games, and we start with Port Adelaide versus St Kilda. So obviously you enjoyed this one. Port Adelaide won this one.
Yeah, we're back.
Back, one of the best teams in the Premiership favourites, Port Adelaide.
Yeah, Port Adelaide played brilliant footy after the quarter time. They just pretty much stole it away from him. Jason Horne-Francis looks like the booing's not worrying him, or even if it is, it doesn't show it in his performance on Friday night.
I think that the big thing is, I think it's crap that the media's came out now and acting like, we can't boo him anymore. It's like they're the ones who fucking sparred it.
We get with this every year. Like with Ginnivan a couple last year and all that. They
spark the drama and then they try to act like that. Oh, stop it!
Yeah, it's like
shut up, cunt. You're the one who started
guys that ignites the fire to it. So
do you think this is something I've asked that people ask? Do you think Kane Corns is the one who's sparring this a bit?
I think he is. I think there was a couple. It was about a couple of weeks ago on radio. He was saying him and David King were arguing about it, and he said that he'd keep doing it just to annoy the North Melbourne fans. And I thought,
just shut your mouth and let him play.
Just shut you up and let him play. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I'm not one of those people who really hate Kane Corns. I don't mind some of the stuff he says, but it's like if it's gonna, maybe it is helping Horne-Francis. Maybe he's like, it sparks him to play better. Yeah. I mean, it did against St Kilda, but I think that it's just to the point now. It's like, just if you really want it to stop, just let it go and shut up.
But I think you get it with the team fans like North Melbourne. Like North Melbourne will boo him.
Yeah,
but they probably have the right to. But no one else
It's kind of weird that
it's kind of other teams in Melbourne to do it.
Yeah, that's very strange. I mean, it's not like other clubs when for example, Archie Perkins when he got drafted to Victoria and he didn't want any other club from outside of Victoria to get him.
Yeah.
It's not like every interstate club is booing him. So it's kind of strange that a Victorian basis is booing Horne-Francis.
Yeah.
And it's not like when he left he said fuck you to Victoria, he just said fuck you to North Melbourne. So anyway, nonetheless, with this game, I think Port Adelaide in the last quarter really stood up and took out St Kilda. I know this may be a little bit controversial, but I didn't put Horne-Francis with the 3 votes. I gave it to Zach Butters because I feel like that he really kept Port Adelaide in the game. He played very well early, and he was very good throughout the game, in my opinion. I think he played the full 4 quarters. So I gave him the 3 votes, and I know a lot of Port fans would be pissed off by that. I did give Horne-Francis the 2 votes. Originally, I had Rowan Marshall, but I swapped that out because I didn't realise how many, a lot, like all his contested stuff that he did. When I watched this game, I did think that Horn Francis was one of Port's best, so I did give him the 2 votes. And the 1 vote I gave to Travis Boak. I mean...
You didn't give Marshall the 1 vote.
No, I gave Travis Boak the 1 vote because I thought that Travis Boak played really, really well. And I thought that the best was behind him now. Yeah. I thought this year was the year when he was going to go down. But in the start of this year, he's played quite poor. But on Friday night, he actually lifted for Port. Yeah. And he was arguably one of the players that got him back into the game.
Yeah, he did play pretty well, especially in that last quarter. I think he had like 10 plus disposals or something. Just to really wheel him over.
I think he got 30 in the end, and he's like the 6th or 7th player to do that over 30 years of age. So, I mean, I think he played very well, Travis Boak. It'll be interesting to see if they rest him throughout the year and try and get him through if Port make finals. So we'll have to see how that goes.
They might have to.
Yeah. But after that, we get to first Saturday game, which is Brisbane versus Fremantle. This one was just a drubbing, and I think Fremantle are in deep trouble.
Yeah, they are just... They're the most disappointing team this year. We've been saying it for the last 3 weeks, but they are.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be I think they have to go back to the trade table and start moving players around and start... I think, unfortunately, maybe Darcy has to get pushed out so they can get a decent forward.
Yeah, because the sad thing is that Darcy's one of the best ruckmen in the game, I think, as it is now. But because they paid overs for Luke Jackson for too many years, that he's going to be drifted out for, sadly, Darcy.
Yeah, but nonetheless, in this game, I think Brisbane did play very, very well.
Yeah.
We saw probably goal... I think we saw goal of the year with
Ashcroft. We did see goal of the year this year.
I mean, Charlie Cameron thought he had it, and then 1 week later, Ashcroft said, "I'll raise you one more." So, I don't know if Charlie Cameron can find another blinding goal from the pocket to try and get it back, but for now, I think Ashcroft takes the lead.
Yeah, Ashcroft takes the lead. It was Daniel Wells, but better,
in
my opinion. From the pocket, just in the air, like, you can't beat that.
And he, not only that, but he had a really good game as well. He had quite a few touches, and I think he'll get the Rising Star nomination this week, you would assume. I don't think he's got one yet. Has he got one yet?
I got it round 2.
Oh, maybe he did get it. But if he hasn't got it, he'll get it this week.
Yeah.
So for the 3 votes, though, probably the best game for the year that he's had. Lockie Neal, I gave him the 3 votes. He played very well against Freo. The 2 votes I gave to Will Ashcroft, and the 1 vote I gave to Zach Bailey. I think he had a very good game against Fremantle. After that, we get to Sydney's biggest disappointment of the year. Well, no, it wasn't, because we've had some disappointing games
I think last week was pretty disappointing, but...
This one was pretty close to it. The Giants... Sydney had a lead of 4 goals, I think. It was like 4 goals about 10 minutes to go. I was sitting here watching it, and I thought, we're home. Yeah. We're pretty well home. I was nervous, but I was like, we're home. We're playing better. But then, basically, the Giants flicked the switch and Sydney couldn't stop them. Giants played really well, led by Toby Green, kicked the late goal. I think it was very poor that Sydney have lost another game so close. Now, granted, if Ollie Florent kicks it 1 more metre and we stop Toby Green at the stoppage, Sydney are 5-2 and no one's saying crap.
Yeah.
But Sydney are now 3-4 and people are saying that Sydney are done. Now, I actually, the way they're playing, they can't make the finals. I think there's a lot of other teams that are competing for the finals this year, like Essendon, like St Kilda. I know that I've said in the past that St Kilda won't make it. I don't know yet, but I think they would definitely be up there. Even Adelaide, I think, are definitely up there now to make finals. They're playing good footy, and they have a pretty good run with the fixture and stuff.
Even injuries. I think last week they had...
St Kilda not so much injuries.
Yeah. Well,
but the Crows don't have an injury of
anyone.
Any. I think they have 1 injury, but it's he hasn't had not played a game.
They've had a good run with injuries, the Crows. So
yeah, but nonetheless, in this game, I did give the 3 votes to Toby Green. Maybe the statistics don't say that, but he kicked 4 goals and he kicked the winner and kept them in this game. He was single-handedly keeping them in it throughout the first 3 quarters. The 2 votes I gave to Tom Green. He played very well in the midfield for the GWS, and they did miss him the week before. And the 1 vote I did give to Luke Parker. Now, one thing I will mention, though, is Peter Laddams did play his best game for the Swans.
Yeah.
He played very well for Sydney, and I have had my thoughts about Peter Laddams, but he played really well, and I had to mention that because he played really good footy. And if he can keep that form, maybe he can keep Tom Hickey in the reserves for a bit. I think maybe now you give him 1 more week in the ruck, and if Buddy Franklin needs a rest, maybe play him forward for a bit. But you can't play McLean, Laddams, Hickey, Franklin and McDonald in the one team.
No.
I think that's too
tall.
many.
Yeah.
It's way too tall. But nonetheless, Sydney were very disappointing, and if they don't turn it around quickly, they're going to miss the finals, which would be a huge dip considering they made the grand final last year.
Yeah, but it's not like...
And honestly, I think that there's definitely a little bit of still a little bit of like nerves and thoughts of last year. I think there's still a little bit of a hangover, not a hangover, but like a thought of, oh, we still lost the grand final by so much. And I mean, we've seen clubs who lose massively in grand finals drop massively. I mean, we saw Port Adelaide in 2007 against the Geelong getting flogged and then not coming back for... And I mean, it took them, till 2014 to get back? And then we even saw St Kilda against Collingwood in the second grand final take them... I mean, they're still arguably fighting back from it. And even the Crows in 2017, they're still not fully back yet. So, you know, when you lose in a grand final by that much, it can, like, sour your team and haunt you for years. After that, we get to the Bulldogs versus Hawthorn. Hawthorn stayed with the Bulldogs and made this game be an absolute slugfest, but in the end, they did pull away the Bulldogs in the last quarter and won it pretty comfortably. I mean, they won by 5 goals.
Yeah, it did show up in the end. The better team won.
Yeah, and to be honest, this game wasn't a fucking highlight. I don't think anyone's going to be remembered in this one and be like, oh, what a game of football. But nonetheless, one player that did stand out for me was Caleb Daniel. He played really well in this game. I gave him the 3 votes. 2 votes I gave to Aaron Norton. He played very well up forward. And the 1 vote I actually gave to James Warple. I think he's actually finding the form that they were hoping for at the start of the year.
Yeah.
In the last 2 games, he's actually played really good footy.
I think, with Will Day being suspended, Warple took the spot from him, and showing the good form that he showed a couple of years ago in his best and fairest year that he played Warple.
Yeah,
so.
and now that Will Day's back, I think both of them are playing quite good. Well,
Yeah.
in that game, they played very well.
Yeah.
After that, we get to the Saturday night games. There's not going to be much to talk about here.
They were both horrible.
Yeah, they were both horrible games of footy. I switched between games throughout the night, and honestly, the Demons North Melbourne game we'll talk about first. North Melbourne were freaking woeful. They didn't look like they wanted to be there. The first 5 minutes of footy, Melbourne won the game by then, and they were kicked 8-1 in the first quarter. It was game over.
Yeah, well, did you hear Clarkson's?
Yeah, I don't know
what
why
was he
he said
talking
that.
about? Like,
Did you watch the same game, dude?
Yeah.
Acting like it wasn't that big. They shouldn't have lost by that much, dude. You deserve to lose by over 100
Like
points.
that
You were lucky
first-
that North Melbourne were allowed a couple of goals late.
Yeah, like what? Petrarca had a field day again.
I think he kicked 3 goals as well.
Yeah.
So with the 3 votes, I did give it to Christian Petrarca. He kicked 3 goals. I think he had 30 touches as well. 2 votes I gave to Clayton Oliver. I think those two are definitely fighting each other for it. I think Petrarca's actually coming out a bit here.
Yeah.
And he could actually pull in front of Clayton Oliver very soon in the votes. Like, especially in the year. So, if both of them can stay fit, I think they're definitely the best 1-2 combination in the midfield.
Definitely.
In the competition. So, they're both playing very well. Oliver the 2 votes. And the 1 vote I actually gave to Pickett. He had a lot of disposals in this game, played a little bit of time in the midfield, and actually had a few goal assists as well.
Yeah.
And I did look at those. I think goal assists are definitely an underrated statistic in the game. If you can set up goals, you're definitely a very valuable player, and I think that's why, even though Charlie Spargo, I don't rate him a lot, but he does get a lot of goal assists for Melbourne, and that's why he does get a spot most weeks.
Yeah.
After that, we get to the other game, and this was just Charlie Curnow, really. I mean, this was just Charlie Curnow who kicked more goals than the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah.
I mean, nonetheless, Carlton won this game. They've looked very poor the last few weeks, but maybe this could spark their season back up again.
Yeah.
It was a 108-point win, so it wasn't much to talk about.
It was just a percentage boost.
Yeah, and they needed it too, because they've lost a couple of games pretty poorly.
But you got to give the credit to the West Coast fans. Like, I think it showed... I think the attendance was over 42,000. So that's a good crowd in Perth for a team that's doing pretty woeful at the moment. Like the St Kilda game only got 27,000. So it shows that the loyal fans of West Coast are coming out for the games.
Yeah, but West Coast is going to give a better performance than that.
Yeah, but I think tonight, it'll be interesting what the next home game they get, what crowd they get. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I actually wanted to bring up, but I was thinking of doing this, but I think we should. With the West Coast Eagles, I think they need to do almost what Hawthorn did and clear out.
Yeah.
I think that, for example, if we listed players, I don't know if you see this like in a couple of YouTube channels do it in soccer or whatever, they say like players, they list players and say should they stay or go.
Yeah.
I'll do that for a bit. Because West Coast have a lot of players that get paid high money who are just on the injury list for the majority of the season. So I'll list a few players. You tell me if you think they should stay or go. Luke Shuey.
Go.
Go.
Yeah.
Nick Natanui.
Stay.
Yeah,
I do. Just because he's a ruckman that they don't have a lot of ruckman there. The Eagles.
I mean, Bailey Williams though has played more games than Nick
but I
Natanui
think
in the
it's
past
more
3
the
years.
experience that he brings that can help him develop. That.
Well, I would say go, but I mean, it's very hard to let him go, but I would say trade him out and get some picks.
Yeah.
That's just me. But anyway, who else? Andrew Gaff.
Stay.
I'd say go. I know that's a big thing, but I don't think he does enough for the club. I think that Tim Kelly needs to take that spot now, and they need to play some young players through the midfield. That's just me, but anyway. Jack Darling.
Go.
You kick him out?
Yeah, I think go. I don't know. The fans.
I think he would do okay at a good team.
I think the fans don't want him there.
We were there at a gather around in that West Coast game, and all of them was shouting at him to fucking leave the ground. I think it's a time for Oscar Allen to take that spot.
I think
and give someone else a young.
He was showing a bit early, wasn't he?
Well, he's sixth in the Coleman, I think, at the moment.
So he's showing a bit.
Yeah. Who else we got?
McGovern.
I think stay, because I think he's still one of their best defenders, but he's got to stay fit, and I think
he's the only one besides Barras that's like a tall defender.
Yeah.
Really, if you look at their lineup, you got Harry Edwards, but
I think he's injured as well.
Yeah, I think that he has to stay. McGovern.
Elliot Yeo.
I think he does stay because the fact is that he's he can play multiple roles.
I was going to say the same. I still think he should stay. Sam Petreski-Seaton.
I don't know why he's even on the team anymore. He had so much hype in his draft year, and he hasn't shown it at all.
He shows maybe one or two moments in one game every couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I think he's only in the team right now because there's so many injuries, I believe. Jamie Cripps.
I think stay.
I think go. I don't think he does enough anymore. He's definitely been good for West Coast, and he's very good in their premiership year. But I think it's time that he goes to another team.
Yeah. Shannon Hearn should go. I don't know why he's still there when they have Witherden, they have Foley.
Yeah, I think
they have a lot of youth small defenders in their team.
Yeah, I don't think and I'm not saying that any of these players aren't good players anymore. Sorry, they're not good players, but I think West Coast need, because they still aren't really going to the draft.
No.
I mean, yes, they picked up Jinby, and he looks like he's going to be a great player for West Coast, but how many players are they bringing in now that they have to bring in through necessity, and they're not performing? They're not just showing anything. I mean, we've seen, I think it's Noah Long. He's played okay for West Coast this year up forward. Foley and West and that, they're playing okay, but they would have been a lot better 2 years ago if they were getting games. Yeah. But now they're coming in with their 6th or 8th or 10th or 15th game when they should be nearly at 50 now.
Yeah, they should be playing their 40th and 35th, 40th game.
So these players now are coming up all together, and they're not got enough experience. Yeah. So I think it's just poor list management, and I think Adam Simpson's not solely to blame, but I think that because they didn't want to go to the draft, now they're scratching their heads trying to look for other options when they don't have any.
And obviously they've got injuries, but also a lot of teams do. Maybe they've got decimated by them, but you look at St Kilda, they're in the top 8, top 4.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. They need to go to the draft, and they need to do it now, really. Maybe the mid-season when they can.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I mean, we could talk about West Coast all day, but I don't think we want to bore anyone with that. So we'll get to the votes. Charlie Curnow obviously gets the 3. He kicked 9 goals. He played brilliant. Nick Newman, I gave the 2 votes. He played really well, 14 marks. He played some brilliant footy. And the 1 vote I gave to Sam Walsh. If he started at the start of the year, I think he'd be a Brownlow smoky.
Yeah, he would be. He'd be probably up there with Dacos at the moment.
Yeah, he's playing some brilliant footy. After that, we get to Essendon versus Geelong. And to be honest, this game was over when Geelong kicked the first 6 goals.
Yeah.
Now, Essendon, it's unfortunate. They stayed with them the majority of the day, but they didn't wake up in the first 20 minutes, and that's when the game was done.
Yeah, that was it. And like I said, to why I tipped the Geelong for this game is that Tom Hawkins was just too big for Zerk Facture, and
it's why they kicked 8.
And the thing is that they didn't show you anything in the midfield. They didn't show anything in the midfield in the first 20 minutes, and it was just pretty much tap from the ruckman down to Dangerfield into the 50 to Hawkins, and that was the first 20 minutes.
If it wasn't for Jake Stringer and Sam Wiedemann, they wouldn't have even troubled the scorers for a lot of this game.
Yeah, they both kicked 4, didn't they?
No, Sam Wiedemann kicked 5.
Yeah, so 9 goals
of the 16 that they got. I mean, they did kick 104 in the end, but I think that's 100% believe Geelong are back to their premiership best at all, because their defence is still leaking a lot.
Yeah,
yes, they flogged Sydney by 100 points, but I think I think that if other teams, if Essendon of all teams, not Essendon of all teams, but if Essendon is kicking out 100 points against you, can they defend like late? They're beating Essendon. I don't think at the moment they're not premiership team by any means. Are they going to keep up with the Collingwoods of the world and Melbourne? You even saw in round 1 they scored 100, but Collingwood kicked way more and won that game.
Well, you look at it like they kicked 100. It just I don't know why they're deciding not to play Blitzars 100% ruckman and put Sam de Koning back. It didn't make it.
That seemed a bit strange to me.
Yeah.
I thought maybe late in that game, especially when both Wiedemann and Stringer were kicking goals, they probably could have shucked de Koning back, because he does look like one of the best lockdown defenders.
Yeah, he was that last year.
He was, yeah. So with the 3 votes, obviously Tom Hawkins, he kicked 8 goals, career high for him. He got a lot of 7s in his career, but he finally cracked to 8. 2 votes I give to Paddy Dangerfield. He played quite well. He looks like he's finally coming into his season. The first 3 rounds he was pretty woeful, and I was questioning why they picked him as captain, but the last 4 weeks he's played pretty good footy, and I think he's definitely coming into the role. And the 1 vote, maybe a little bit strange, but I did give it to Sam Wiedemann. I think 5 goals in a game of footy is pretty rare these days.
Yeah.
So 5 goals, I did give it to him. He was definitely battling for that 1 vote with Jake Stringer. I just gave it to Wiedemann because he kicked 5, and I think that's why clubs are very surprised that Sam Wiedemann wasn't picked up earlier from Melbourne.
Yeah. I'm
very surprised by that, because he was sitting in the VFL for so many years, not getting a game for Melbourne, which, understandable. Melbourne had a very good forward line, but I'm very surprised that he didn't get picked up earlier. After that, we get to the Gold Coast versus Richmond, and I think now it's time to say that Richmond are basically done.
They're done, yeah.
I think it's time now that Richmond accept the fact that I don't think they have to do a full rebuild, but they kind of have to kick out the fat. They need to I'm sorry, but Cochin, Dustin Martin and Jack Rewald have to consider possibly leaving at the end of the year.
Yeah, they do. And
probably Dylan Grimes as well.
But let's be honest, they only lost that because they played at Marvel, wasn't it? That was the only.
I think they've lost 8 the games there in a row now.
Yeah, well, Port Adelaide have won 8 in a row, so at Marvel. So
I think Richmond have to be. I think they have to be. I think for 2 things that have to happen. I think Damien Hardwick has to decide: does he want to rebuild this team again? And yet they have to decide if Cochin, Martin, Rewald, and Grimes are going to be in the next premiership. Yeah. And the answer is no. They're not going to be a part of the next premiership.
Yeah.
And I think that Damien Hardwick I think he's got a little bit tired now, and I think he maybe wants to find a new venture, maybe at another club. I think that's maybe what they're thinking. I think he's getting a bit tired of Richmond. And I know I'm not saying that he's tired of Richmond, he hates them, but I think he's got to the point now. He won them 3 premierships in 4 years.
Yeah.
He did brilliant. He brought them to a dynasty, which I don't think anyone was going to see coming from Richmond.
No, especially after the 2016 season. So.
Yeah, exactly. Where they lost by 100 points in the last game against Sydney. So to turn the club around that quickly, when they all questioned him, was outstanding. But I think now it's the time, I don't know if he can do it again, if he wants to rebuild this club again, give him a chance.
Yeah.
But if they ask him at the end of the year, do you want to go or stay? Ask him seriously, and if he says go, let him go, find a new coach.
Yeah.
In this game, though, Gold Coast, nothing against the Gold Coast, they played some good footy, and without Tuke Miller, I think that's a great thing, that they played really well. I think Noah Anderson stood up without him, and I think Matty Rao played quite well as well, and I think that Darcy McPherson as well has played really good footy down back this year. I think that his career was at a standstill at the end of last year. He's playing in the reserves, but he's found his spot at half back to small forward defender.
Yeah.
He's played quite well. But also, Gold Coast defence is very unheralded, and if they were in Victoria, I think they'd be talked about a lot more.
Yeah, I think they need to get some sort of recognition. Charlie
arguably
Ballard,
some of the best defenders in the league, with Collins, Ballard, Powell, McPherson as well now. They got some very good, and Lockie Weller, who's playing off halfback.
Lemons as well. They've got a good core there. Yeah. It's just that. I think
they just need a couple of A graders. I don't think they have a lot of A graders. They have a lot of B to C graders.
Yeah.
If they can get Ben King to stay fit, I think this year, I don't know if they can make finals. It's early. So, it's only the first quarter of the season. So they definitely have time, but they need to play consistent footy, and I just don't trust them to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a bit hard for them. Nonetheless, though, 3 votes I gave to Noah Anderson. He's definitely lifted in the first few weeks. He was a bit quiet, but he's definitely lifted since then. He's played some great footy, and I think he's definitely... It's funny because, I mean, obviously when they both got drafted, him and Rao, everyone thought that Matt Rao was going to be the next thing, and they didn't really talk about Noah Anderson, but...
Yeah.
Despite Rao is definitely playing well, but he doesn't get enough easy touches. All of them are contested, and all of them are very hard. Noah Anderson is finding the football, and he's a very good quality player. So I gave him the 3. The 2 votes I gave to Charlie Ballard. Now, my brother watched a lot more of this game. I didn't. I watched a lot. Obviously, I was streaming the Crows game at the time, so I didn't see a lot of this one. But you messaged me and said Charlie Ballard.
Yeah, he had to be. Like he had like 12 marks in the game. I think like 7 of them was intercepted. That he played brilliantly on Rewalt. He just dominated that game, and like most of the defense, really, like he just.
I think at the time I had it on Darcy McPherson for 2 votes because I thought he played quite well, which I think he did as well. I think he probably gets... He nearly got 1 vote for me, but the person I did give the 1 vote was Will Power. And I think he played very well as well.
Yeah, he took away a lot of Lockie Weller's influence, which was annoying for fantasy people, but he did play pretty well though.
And finally, we get to game of the round, arguably game of the season, which was the Crows versus Collingwood. Now, obviously, I watched this live and we were live streaming it on the channel. This was a big game for both clubs, and I know Crows supporters, I think, definitely agree on this. They kicked themselves out of it.
Yeah, they did. They
some of the shots that they missed, and the thing is, they couldn't get Darcy Fogarty into the game to kick some clean goals. So they struggled, and I mean, they only have themselves to blame.
Yeah, like what? There was like 3 or 4 in the second quarter that were straight front, and they missed.
Yeah, and it was early in that game. Obviously, Collingwood didn't even kick a goal in the first quarter.
Yeah,
and the Crows, all they had to do, because I think it was like 3-9 they were at one stage.
29-0 before they scored.
Yeah, it was. They had so many chances to just kick Collingwood out of this game, and they didn't take it. And I mean, you got to give credit to Collingwood. They caught back again, and they somehow pulled this game off. And it was, I mean, I know he's only in his second year, but Nick Dacos didn't have a lot of influence on this game. He had a lot of touches, but he didn't have hardly any influence on this game.
He did get, I think,
it was a soft tag.
Injury,
Oh, did he?
So he got injured a bit, but he did get that soft tag from Ben Keys. Maybe if he's there the entire match, Crows win it, because they did let it loose in the second half. But can I ask you a question? Why the hell is there 4 umpires on the field?
Yeah, there were a couple of free kicks in that last quarter that were woefully missed. I mean, it was one Darcy Fogarty who hit Murphy coming. He was coming back with a fly, hit Murphy. I'm sure you guys have seen the replay, and that wasn't paid as front on contact. Yes, Fogarty had the eyes for the ball the whole way, but he didn't take much of the ball. I don't think he took any of the ball, and he took Murphy majority out of that context. That's a free kick every day of the week.
But then after that, like the next contest, and the goalie kicks it out. Because he doesn't want to because the doctors are still on the field because they're trying to take him off.
Yeah,
like,
he went to
stop
soccer
play until he comes off because he was only like 10 metres from the boundary line.
Yeah.
Or you I don't know.
You take the benefit of the doubt, because the reason why the goalie didn't thump it off the ground is because he didn't want to hit one of his doctors.
Yeah, because the way he was going, and then
you could see in the play, he looked up, he saw the doctors, and he's like, "Oh shit!" and he went and tapped it.
Yeah.
And the umpire pinned him for that. And then later in the game, Ash Johnson got taken completely high, almost got his head taken off in the goal square, and the umpire missed it.
Yeah, like, and...
I mean, by the way, we're a Swans and a Port supporter. We don't fucking like Collingwood as much as... Even the Crows, but we don't like Collingwood either. So don't come at us and say, oh, we love Collingwood.
But there was also one instance that... was a hold against Quaynor, I think it was like in the second quarter, and you hear on the commentary... the umpire called that from 150 metres away. Like, you can't... Through the amount of bodies, that were probably about 10
bodies.
He
paid it from like 60 or 70 metres away.
Like, you can't tell me he held him.
Yeah.
70 metres... From 150 metres away with 7 players in the way of you.
They made that point later in the game. How did 4 umpires miss the high free kick against Ash Johnson in the goal?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're talking about how the 4 umpires were going to be a great idea, and they haven't been so far. I think that hasn't got any better.
No.
Anyway, with the game though, back to the votes. Jordan Dawson played brilliantly for the Crows. And
he nearly did it again for captain.
He nearly did it. But I gave him the 3 votes. The 2 votes I gave to Darcy Moore.
Yeah.
He played brilliantly at the back half and obviously took the mark at the end of the game to win it.
Yeah.
He played brilliant footy. He wouldn't obviously have a lot of the statistics in that, but the disposals and that. But this isn't 100% a midfielders award. This one that we're going to be giving. Obviously, we're not giving them shit, but not that any player's going to watch this. But, Darcy Moore played really well in the back line.
Yeah, he did.
And one player that I think has played a really good year, but obviously I think his brother is taking all the shine, which is understandable. But Josh Dacos in that last quarter played brilliant footy.
Yeah, he nearly kicks the winning goal to get him home earlier, but
yeah, he played some brilliant footy in this game. And I mean, Collingwood weren't exactly the straight kicking team, but they definitely found it in the final moments. Yeah. Sidebottom kicked the winning point.
When you had Sidebottom there, you thought he wasn't going to miss the entire lot. So
yeah. But now, that's the end of the votes for this week, so just check us out on Instagram, Boundary Riders. You see it on the screen right now. If you check that out, you'll see the votes every single game. I do it on there, so you can check that out first off. So now we get to round 8. This is going to be a pretty big round. Our certainty picks have already been made, and honestly, I think, knock on wood, this should be a pretty good week where finally both of us will get a certainty pick. I got it last week. I picked Carlton to beat West Coast. You missed it by 1 point. GWS, you picked Sydney to be a certainty.
I watched a bit of the last quarter and I thought 4 goals up. Surely I got it. I was at work and after work I looked at the scores and I'm like, how the hell did I lose that one? And I watched the replay and I saw that they just stopped this one. So
yeah, but now we get to round 6. But now we get to the start of round 8. First game of the round is Carlton versus Brisbane. This is a hard one. I think this is very hard because it's in Melbourne. If it was in Brisbane, this is Brisbane every day. But for me, I've picked Carlton just because I think they're a little bit better in Victoria.
Yeah, I've went Brisbane because the fact is that they have the runs on the board. They've won the past 4. They've won the last 4 and they look better. Like Danaher, Hipwood, they look better in at how they're going at the moment. So I've went Brisbane.
After that, we get to probably not the worst game of the round, but it's
I don't know.
It's up there with one of the worst games of the round, in my opinion. It's Richmond versus West Coast. Because this is the MCG, I'm picking Richmond, and even though I got the second, my brother had the first pick this week, but he had picked a different game. I'm picking Richmond for my certainty pick against West Coast. Richmond aren't playing that well, but they're playing better than West Coast, so I'm going to give Richmond my certainty pick.
Yeah, I've went Richmond, unless if West Coast somehow get like 15 of their players back off the injury list this week, Richmond should win. And at the MCG, where it used to be their bloody fortress, that they should be able to win again.
Yeah. After that, we get to Geelong versus Adelaide. If this wasn't down in Geelong, I'd be giving this a 50-50.
Yeah.
But the Crows have not played very well down in Geelong at all for a long time. And Geelong look like they're getting back to some of their best form.
Yeah. And I think, like last week with Geelong, the Hawkins factor of him being back in form, I don't think they have
Cameron still being in form as well.
Yeah, and Cameron as well. But I mean, the big body of Hawkins, I don't think the Crows have the matchup for him. I don't think Butts he's like he might be a bit bigger than Zach Fracture.
Yeah,
but he's just not the same. He's just not going to be the matchup. And then Hawkins, I think, will have another field day again.
After that, we get to the. Oh, shit, my phone died. Hang on, no, it didn't. Anyway, Gold Coast versus Melbourne. Now, the Gold Coast, I think, are back in a little bit of form, but I think, and it is up in the Gold Coast as well, but I have picked Melbourne for this one. I think Melbourne are definitely up there as one of the premiership favourites, and the one thing the Gold Coast have on their side, though, is when Melbourne have been off this year, they've lost pretty well. They've probably lost pretty poorly.
They've been off by a lot.
They've lost and they did lose up in Brisbane or Queensland earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So, but I am picking Melbourne for this game.
Yeah, I think Melbourne. I think it does. Like, you just don't trust the Gold Coast how they're going at the moment, and I think, like, yes, they played Richmond, but this week you're playing against a good midfield. And it will be the Gold Coast midfield will be exposed by the Melbourne midfield.
After that, we get to one of the bigger rivalries in the AFL, GWS versus the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs did play very well on the weekend, and the Giants did too. But I think the Giants are going to fall off a little bit. I feel like when they had a big win against the Crows in round 1, they fell off in round 2 and lost to the West Coast.
Yeah.
I think, even though this is at home, I feel like the Bulldogs are playing a little bit better footy. So I'm just, even though it's at Monica, so it's not a home for the Bulldogs, I'm going to give the Bulldogs the tip here.
Yeah, I think the Bulldogs win again. Like, it just doesn't seem like the Giants can play 2 weeks in a row well, and I've just got more faith in the Bulldogs to win again.
After that, we get to Fremantle versus Hawthorn. This one, I think, is the worst game of the round.
Worst game of the round.
This one is at Optus Stadium, so Fremantle should win this game. Hawthorn have looked better in the past few weeks, but I feel like Fremantle surely win this one at home.
Yeah, I think they do. Like, you just can't think that they'll lose another game at home. The Dockers, like, they lost to North Melbourne in their first home game of the season. I think it was.
Surely, yes.
Yeah, surely Freo do win this week.
After that, we get to Sunday. This is Port Adelaide versus Essendon. I think this is a big game because Essendon obviously poor against Geelong in the first quarter last week, and the week before that they were poor in the fourth quarter against Collingwood.
Yeah.
So this down at Adelaide Oval, they did beat Melbourne at Adelaide Oval and Gather Round, but I feel like Port Adelaide at home. Port Adelaide should and I think need to win this game to cement themselves, to put themselves in the 8 and actually prove themselves as a team to beat this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in the top 5, they're in the top 8 right now. They're nearly in the top 4. I think Port Adelaide should win this game and win this game pretty well.
Yeah, I think Port should win. Essendon don't really have a great record in Adelaide. Like, yes, they did beat Melbourne in Gather Round, but they don't really have a great record. And Dixon should have a field day like Hawkins did last week with the big body of him against Zerk Thatcher. He should be able to have a field day. Marshall should come back in, so Ollie Lord may get dropped, but it'll be interesting what the ruckman do look like because I think he got Lysett got injured in the Sandfall.
I don't know if he'll come back in.
But Teakle didn't look great against the Saints. But
yeah,
so it'll be interesting what the Port ruckman look like this week.
Now we get to Collingwood versus Sydney. This was obviously the massive prelim final last year. Obviously, I think a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
Sydney are not playing good footy. I'm not even going to mention the injuries because I think that Sydney's defensive injuries don't matter against Collingwood because Collingwood don't have a big bustling forward. Sydney honestly match up pretty well against Collingwood's defence. Collingwood's forward line. Sydney's defence match up pretty well against Collingwood's forward line. But I think that Collingwood are going to dominate in the middle. Sydney have not proven themselves in the midfield for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think in the Giants game, there was a lot of the time where Sydney were playing okay, but I've seen Sydney play a whole lot better, and I don't think they're going to be... Sydney have to be at their absolute best to beat Collingwood, or even get close to Collingwood, and I don't think Sydney have found that sort of form at all. So I'm going to be picking Collingwood this game.
Yeah. I think Collingwood win. They won without Pendlebury, which is rare, obviously, because he's been there forever.
He doesn't miss many games.
He doesn't miss many games, so he'll probably come back in, likely. And there's someone have a good record in Melbourne, don't they? MCG, but I don't
before the grand final. They did.
But Collingwood should win. They've got they just look too good at the moment, really.
Yeah, they've got the form. Final game of the round is North Melbourne versus St Kilda. I think a couple of weeks ago this actually could have been a pretty big contest. But North Melbourne have just fallen off the edge of the cliff. And I don't know what they can do to bring it back. They have played poor footy. They have no attacking forward. They have no forward line option other than Larkey. And I still think that's a huge deficit for them.
Yeah.
Comben obviously got a massive injury early in that game and was... it was unfortunate. He obviously broke his leg. I don't know if a lot of people haven't seen the clip because they won't show it, which I don't really know about that. I mean, I get that. I mean, if maybe they should just put a graphic warning on there, but whatever. I mean, if they don't want to show it, they don't want to show it. That's completely fine. Hopefully, he comes back because he's been very injury prone since he joined the AFL. So all thoughts go out to him and his family. But North Melbourne in this game are going to get beaten, and I think beaten comfortably at Marvel Stadium, where St Kilda are definitely at their best.
Yeah, I've used my certainty pick on this game. St Kilda, they didn't win against Power, but they did show a lot in that game, and their midfield, because Dave Giniak was laid out, wasn't he, last week?
He was out before the laid outs.
Oh, but him being out, I don't know how long that will be for. St Kilda should win. They line up so much better, and Sinclair coming into the midfield the last couple of weeks has helped their midfield.
Yeah, I think Sinclair definitely should be a lock in that midfield now. I think he played very well last week, and I think he should be in there for the rest of the season, to be honest. I think he's playing some good footy, Jack Sinclair, and I think he's a very underrated player.
Yeah.
But now finally, guys, for the podcast this week, we'll get into our fantasy teams. Now, I scored really well. I got 2,314 this week, but my rank went down, so I wasn't too impressed by that. But a lot of people actually got 2,400, and one person I can see here got 2,500.
Yeah, he got like 1,600s and the...
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. But, I mean, I was proud of I was happy with my score. I got lucky. Well, not lucky. I saw it coming. Rowan Marshall in the game against Port Adelaide. I saw this coming. I saw that Port Adelaide had only Tik Tok as their ruck, and they had a second ruckman for the rest of this game. Marshall was very good in this game, and I know I didn't give him a vote. I had him as a vote, but I thought Horn Francis was definitely better in this game, like more influential for Port. So, nonetheless, I had vice captain on Marshall, and because obviously you can use the loophole. I don't think a lot of people realise that, but you can loophole your play. So if you put a player as your vice captain on your team who plays like earlier in the round, then you don't have to risk putting it like let's say you put Marshall as captain and he only gets 80, then you only get 160. If you put a vice captain on him, he scores well, he gets 159 like he did, then you just put a player in your team that's got a red dot, obviously not selected, and then you just put them as captain, and then you just put the player on your bench that you swapped out, who's usually in your best 22, you just put them as a emergency, and then you get their score. So I don't know why a lot of people don't do that, but yeah, that's something that I did, and I obviously used that 159, that's 318, and I was happy with that score. Obviously the rest of my players did very, very well. Most, I think I had 14 or 1500s this week, like players score over 100. And one player that didn't, though, was Jinby. So Jinby's done very well, serviceable as the rookie player at the start of the year, but I finally have to just say goodbye to him. I got rid of Jinby and I got Zach Butters. Now that may change. I did swap Zeeble into the forward line. I swapped him into the defence. So I'm a little bit conflicted on Rochelle or Butters. At this stage, I'm going to go Butters just because he's getting more midfield time for Port Adelaide now. And I feel like he has a higher ceiling to get a higher score. But I'm a little bit shaky because one thing that Rochelle has that Butters doesn't is Rochelle is consistently scoring. He's never scored under 75 this year.
Mm.
And Butters is prone to having a really bad game and getting a 50. So I'm going to go Butters. And then my second one was just it wasn't really a downgrade because they're both the same price, but this is basically me picking a rookie for a rookie who's going to score. I got rid of Bergman for North Melbourne. He hasn't played for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I got Josh Weddle, who debuted for Hawthorn last week. He got 55. So I'm thinking the way he's playing, I think Seamus Mitchell actually maybe dropped this week because he was subbed out of this game.
Oh, so, great.
Oh, didn't you know he got subbed?
No.
Yeah, he was on 45 and he got subbed late in the third quarter. I was surprised by that. I thought they were going to sub out the other debutant in Ramsden. But yeah, those are my trades for this week. I'm thinking now, because I've got a couple of reserves, I was going to get rid of Chandler this week, but he scored so well, I feel like his price is going to go up a little bit more, so I decided to keep him. And plus, I think that Melbourne have a couple of easy games in the next few weeks, so I feel like he's going to have a chance to score a few more, because he's going to be able to kick a few more goals. But that's my team for that week. I'm going to be kicking Taranto as my vice, because they play on Saturday afternoon, and I've got Marshall as my captain, which obviously may change if Taranto scores well. But what have you done this week?
So I was horrible this week because I didn't pick Buddy. Marshall was the VC. I went with Bontempelli, which got 90. I was just lucky that I got Taranto, who got 126. But
36.
26.
Oh, that's Tom Green. Yeah.
Yeah, I went Taranto with the captain last week. So I only got 2,250, so I went...
That's not bad.
It's when everyone else gets... When that score is ranked at 24,000... It was a bad week.
Yeah.
And yeah, my rank got shot in that week because of it. And like players like Philippou and Seamus Mitchell, who got less than 50, didn't help in my team. So I took a big hit this week. So this week my trades were I got rid of Philippou and I got Chinchetta for Carlton. Chincotta, sorry. So
we got 300. You missed out on him early.
Yeah, I missed out on him early. I should have got him last week, but I just didn't have the time to do it. And McGrath, I should have got rid of him a couple of weeks ago, but I think injuries stalled that. So I got rid of McGrath, and I got Jack Sinclair for St Kilda. I think he's playing the last couple of weeks. He's played pretty well. He looks to be getting midfield time now, which is pretty good. But he was always doing that when he's playing defence. So yeah, it's about time that he's in my team. This week I've decided to go Taranto's VC against the West Coast Eagles, and I've went Tim English against the Giants. So that's on Saturday night. So hopefully,
Taranto scores well. We don't have to worry about it.
I don't know, but yeah, it's nice to have the VC if he scores well to not
Taranto
worry.
is the only. I think he's the only player who hasn't scored under 100 this year, or one of the few players who hasn't scored under 100.
Yeah,
Because he scored 99,
Yeah,
which I mean isn't that bad. But yeah, guys, that's the podcast for this week. Make sure to go check out Jackpot Junkies. Again, we can't really put the multi in because it's a Monday when we're recording this, so we can't put the multi up. But yeah, we haven't been able to do that for I think 3 weeks now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well,
but,
I'm not having a good run anyway. I'm losing 2 weeks. Yeah,
that's all right. Make sure to go check out Jackpot Junkies over on Instagram. I will link it in the description below so you guys can check that out. Make sure to let us know how you're feeling about the podcast so far. Up to episode 9, I think, now. So we're getting pretty on. I mean, I think it's actually a statistic that most podcasts don't get to episode 10. So if we hit that next week, whoa! But yeah, thanks for watching today, guys. Hopefully your team wins this week. But for now, that's all from us. So we'll catch us all later.
Yep, see you later, guys.